Hello, and welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, and real-world first-hand experience. Today, hopefully a good episode that many of you will enjoy. American classics, just some classic American firearms. You know, not everything has to be AR-15 and striker-fired polymer handguns of your choice. We certainly do plenty of those episodes here, and God willing, we'll do more on that soon. But I don't want it to be just that. I want, Gun Culture 1.0 and Gun Culture 2.0, the classic blued steel and walnut guns and the AR-15s to go together. They're all part of a rich heritage that we should enjoy. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector, pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. With that, men, There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, especially since we've all lived through the past, let's say 3 years, things get a little crazy. Maybe not the America we have the nostalgia for. And though we may never get back to that America, we can have little glimpses of it and enjoy little pieces of it. You can have your old, tin signs, Norman Rockwell Americana, your classic American muscle cars. Well, especially for me, was made really well here in America of steel and walnut and beautiful wood and craftsmanship and weapons that men use to protect their family and put food on the table for generations here in America. So let's go back to simpler times. Let's talk today about some classic American firearms. I should mention, if this is not your first rodeo here with us I hope you've already subscribed and left a review, scroll down and hit some stars, but if you haven't, I'd appreciate that. And with that, we'll get to the number one on our list. And I don't know if these are in any particular order, but this probably deserves a number one spot. Classic Winchester Model 70. American, the rifleman's rifle. And if I had to pick, I would probably pick it in 270. I know a lot of people would think 30-06, but I think that classic American 270 cartridge and a classic American Winchester Model 70 with blued steel and wood and checkering, that's just a classic American firearm. You can hunt all over North America. We hunt a lot of things here in America, but we really seem to like our deer hunting here in North America. And the 270 excels at that, at whether it's a whitetail, in Michigan, or a mule deer out in Idaho. The 270 is a great deer round. It's a great American round. If you base an American round off of an already classic American round, the 30-06, does it get double American? Like a double cheeseburger of America? Anyway, I don't know if that's true, but I do know that the Winchester Model 70 and 270 is a classic American piece of hardware. Another classic, the Colt 1911. The Colt 1911, there's no arguing, it's a classic. Whether it's the original, just Colt 1911 or the 1911A1, or whether it's a more modern classic. What could be more American than a Colt in 45 ACP? That's just all American right there. Like I said, you could go a little bit more modern. I'd say also very American, the Colt Delta Elite or the Colt Combat Elite. I think that's just all American right there. And beautiful and classic and wood and steel and just iconic. Now, one could argue whether the 1911 is more or less classic American than a revolver. But we don't have to argue, we can have one of each on this list. A lot of people would think that Colt Single Action Army, but we already have a Colt 45 on this list. Let's get some love for the Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson is also a classic American company that still makes really good quality American products. Though far newer than the Colt Single Action Army, the Colt Peacemaker, the Smith & Wesson Model 29, the Dirty Harry. I mean, what's a more American character than Dirty Harry? An American cop with a big iron on his hip, dishing out street justice. Just turn that gun into an icon off of that movie. And although I was a police officer, and I don't think it's the best choice for police work, or even really practical for police work, the fact is that the Smith & Wesson Model 29 and 44 Remington Magnum is classic American. As kind of is the story behind the 44 mag and its development with Elmer Keefe, and just, how much gunpowder can I shove in this before I blow guns up? That's pretty American. But you could do your own research on that. It's a fascinating story, much like Jack O'Connor and the 270 story. We touched on the 270 in the beginning. It's got a story all its own that's worth looking into if you like classic American, at least gun Americana. 44 mag is a lot of firepower. Let's talk about another gun that offers a lot of firepower, but in a different way. Now, the Ruger Mini 14 has always kind of taken a back seat or played, second chair in the American semi-automatic 223 rifle role. And I didn't make this a bestseller list. I made this a classic American list. If you want to put the AR on your list, you put it on your list. But I'll submit my argument here. Although, yes, the AR-15 is definitely all American. It was designed here in America in the 1950s. Has been around since the 1950s. I would submit that the Mini 14 is based off the M14, a classic American battle rifle, wood and steel, although short-lived, very well loved. Not only that, but the M14 is based on the M1 Garand. Very similar to the M1 Garand. It's based on it. Box magazine fed in a 308 instead of a 30-06, but you can clearly see the lineage there. So nobody has to argue that the M1 Garand is a classic American warfighter. Well, you take that M1 Garand, you bring it into the modern era. Box magazine fed 308, you get the M14, awesome gun. Then you get an American entrepreneur that looks at that and says, how can I take this, make it profitable, shrink it down, make it a handy little ranch rifle, and just a good American gun? And that's just a good American success story. Taking that, part of the military industrial complex, looking at it as an American and thinking, how can I take this and adopt it to the civilian market and turn a profit? That's pretty American capitalist right there. Not to mention, when you look at it, it looks like a classic American gun. Again, wood. Well, you can get them all different ways, but the classic one, wood and steel. Just a beautiful gun. And you can kind of see that lineage of an M14. It's called the Mini 14, of an M14 and of an M1 Garand. For that reason, I put it on the list. Now let's circle back the wagons to Winchester again. Talk about circling wagons. Conjures up images of the Old West. Classic Americana. John Wayne. Cowboys and outlaws. Cattle drives. Just, that's America right there. That's old classic American nostalgia. And part of that nostalgia is a lever action rifle. So a lever action rifle had to make this list. And although they were using different cartridges then, the 30-30, I believe, still dates back to the 1800s and is classic America. 30-30, I mean, I would hate to think of how many men used the 30-30, and it's still used out west quite a bit. So the Winchester Model 94, standing for 1894, and 30-30 Winchester. If you want a classic one, you might find an older one stamped WCF Winchester Centerfire, which I do believe was the original name of the 30-30. But a classic American gun, the Winchester 1894. It's obviously closely linked to the older Winchesters, the ones you more iconically see in the Old West movies. But the great thing about the 30-30 Winchester Model 94 is it's still a great gun. It's still a good handy woods carbine. It's still great for putting in a saddle on a horse. It's still not obsolete. It's still used all the time. Somebody wearing LL Bean boots and a plaid shirt hunting in Maine to a gray-haired old cowboy riding in the saddle on a ranch in Arizona. it's still a good rifle. It's still classic American. It has had a long, long run, and I do believe they're still being made, and you can still get them made. It is a classic piece of Americana. You just look at it, and it's beautiful, and it's beautifully balanced. It's not only just a good gun for nostalgia's sake, it's a good gun, period. Everybody today is all about the long-range, computerized shooting with microchips likely made in China. But just a classic piece of American wood and steel that you can grab in your hands and put food on the table. That's America right there. That's beautiful. I love that. And the Winchester Model 94 and 3030 has probably had more generations doing that than anything else on the list. The Model 70 and 270 comes close, but it's a little bit newer. That 3030 Winchester Model 94, if you ever pick one up and handle it, you'll see why it's so loved. You don't just ride up on a quad. Nothing against that if you want to do that and set out your rifle on a tripod and get all your computer equipment out. If you actually want to sludge through the woods and through briars and through swamp and things like that, that handy little carbine, the Winchester 94, is just great, and it still is great, and it's a great piece of Americana. Well, Winchester's not the only ones that have been making lever actions for a long time. The other classic that I think about is the Marlin. Now, I originally put on here a Marlin 336 and 35 Remington. Super classic. But I think I'm going to supplant that, replace that with the Marlin 1895 and 4570, because 4570 in America, it's a classic American Western cartridge. It's a classic gun. Big bore American. I just realized that is the second 45 on the list today. I guess we like our 45s here in America. But a Marlin, talking just a hunting standpoint and engineering standpoint, I like the handiness of a Winchester 94. I think it's more elegant and balances better. Talking about a strong, sturdy, engineered gun, I think the Marlin wins. The Marlin is a great gun. You can put a modern optic on it. You can still get these. They're still being made. Although originally the 4570, I believe, was in a single shot rifle. It's still a classic American cartridge, and the Marlin is still a classic American gun. And I do believe it was used in one of the newer Jurassic Parks to hunt and shoot dinosaurs. And that's pretty American, even if totally fictional and not American at all. It's just a cool gun. It's just an iconic American classic. And I thought it would be kind of strange if I put the 336 on here and 35 Remington and didn't have one on here in 4570. I think that is more, it's not, this list is not supposed to be my favorite guns. It's supposed to be classic American guns. And I think a lever action in 4570, although not period correct as they say, doesn't make it any less American. It's very American. Now, we have not as of yet talked about the most versatile of all firearms, the shotgun. You know, I have a special place in my heart for the shotgun. It would be my one long gun if I had to choose one long gun. What do I think is the most classic American shotgun? And I think that is the Remington 870. And there's a lot of good American-made shotguns. But pump action, you know, the English are known for their beautiful side-by-sides and double-barrel shotguns. I think more American is the pump action working man's shotgun. A Remington 870, specifically a Wingmaster and or police model, just takes that American craftsmanship to a new level. They're beautiful. They're beautifully made. If you get an older, 870 Wingmaster, they're just buttery smooth. They are beautifully made. They are just pieces of fine craftsmanship from that era in America, where we made fine stuff here in America. Not only that, out of all the hundreds and hundreds, because you got to think of every police department, sheriff's department, in every jurisdiction in the country, hundreds and hundreds, it would probably be easier to list the agencies that didn't use an 870 at some point than those that did use an 870. That's how ubiquitous it kind of was at one point. So I think for that reason, either the 870 Wingmaster or 870 Police, and I do believe a lot of the early adopters of the 870 used a Wingmaster in the tactical role as well. But the 870 Wingmaster or Police, they're both beautifully well-made American firearms. Much like that Winchester 94 we talked about, American fathers, American men have been using a pump-action shotgun to put food on the table. From deer to turkey to ducks and geese and all manner of other things for a long time. They've also been using them to defend the country, as in the police role, and defending their family, as in the home defense role. And that is very, very American. The right of a well-regulated militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But we don't have a monopoly here in America on gun rights. I believe we certainly do have more freedom than anywhere else in the world that I can think of. And a gun that you can use to defend your family, to defend a neighborhood or a city, as in police work, and a firearm to put food on the table, to provide for your family and yourself and your neighbor. That, to me, is classic and beautiful. And although it shouldn't be exclusive to America, sadly it a lot of times is in today's world. So let's not take that for granted. Although I love a good AR-15 and I like my SCAR-17, and I'm very blessed to have the guns that I have, and if I was going to get into a gunfight tomorrow and I had to and I couldn't get around it, so other people's lives depended on it, I don't want to take a Smith & Wesson Model 29. I want my more modern handgun. Doesn't mean these guns aren't still great. If you're just part of the new gun culture, or have been hitherto, try not to call, the older generation FUDs or whatever because they like these classic guns. Hopefully one day you'll learn to love them too, and they'll have a special place in your heart when you look back and think of where America came from and that nostalgia. There may come a time, and even though you're too young, remember it firsthand. You look at an old tin sign and see that old 57 Chevy, and you yearn for a simple, more morally just and upright nation. The kind of nation that made these firearms, produced them, hunted with them, protected their family with them, and hopefully you learn to love them too. With that, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Gunfighter Life. If you want more, or you want to be an active part of the show, goodshepherdtraining.com, goodshepherdtraining.com. Same if you want to contact me. With that, as a thanks for staying tuned till the end of the episode, the tactical tip of the day. Your tactical tip of the day. Old socks. Probably doesn't sound too tactical, but we all probably have that odd sock where we lost one or one got worn out and we still have the other one. It's been through the wash, it's clean. Don't do this with a dirty sock, probably not going to work out too well. But we probably all have that odd sock where we've washed a pair and lost one or whatever, and we have that sock. Cool thing about the sock is it not only fits on your foot, but you can usually slip it over your hand as well, making it kind of a mitten. Take that, you put it in a small plastic bag, a Ziploc bag, and you spray in there some gun oil, if you have an aerosol gun oil, or just pour some old classic American Rem oil or Ballistol or something in there, and keep that soaked on that, impregnated in that sock. Especially these classic, blued steel and walnut guns, but even your more modern guns. Just take that sock out, put it around your fingers, and rub that gun down. A quick, easy wipe down, especially in adverse conditions, especially in like coastal, marine environments, maritime environments. After a long day of hunting, or when your teenage girl's new boyfriend comes over, whatever. That's classic American too. But you got a spare sock anyway you're probably going to throw away. It makes a great gun rag because it fits right over your hand. It makes it super easy to just wipe down the whole exterior of the gun and maybe reach into the chamber and things like that. And again, you were going to throw it away anyway, probably, if it's a spare sock. Why not put it to some good gun use? Anyway, that is your tactical tip of the day. as a thanks for listening to this whole episode. I am very humbled and very grateful that you guys come here for advice and you value my opinion. I hope to never take that for granted. I am a very blessed man. And with that, the tactical verse of the day. 2 Samuel. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, the God of my strength in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I will call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, so shall I be saved from my enemies. No matter how many guns you have, how many safes full of guns you have, or how much money you have, what you think of the cool new gun on the cover of Recoil magazine, remember it's God who provides and Jesus who saves. With that, men, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.